My name is Dr. Elena Vance, and at 29, I thought I finally understood the meaning of perseverance. I had clawed my way through 8 unforgiving years of medical school, believing that the moment I crossed that graduation stage, the world, or at least my family, would finally see me. What I didn't expect was that the people whose pride I craved the most would choose a week-long vacation over witnessing the biggest milestone of my life. The strange thing about betrayal is that it rarely arrives loudly. Sometimes it comes wrapped in politeness, disguised as a logistical inconvenience. When my parents called to say they, unfortunately, couldn't make it, their voices were smooth, casual, almost bored. They told me they'd booked a last-minute Caribbean cruise. It just happened to overlap. They wished it didn't. But beneath their practiced regret, I heard the real truth slip out, the sentence that cleaved something inside me cleanly in two. "We didn't think you'd actually make it, honey." Those words were heavier than any textbook I had ever carried. People often assume profound pain comes from screaming fights or dramatic blow-ups. But mine came from calm, matter-of-fact honesty spoken by a woman who genuinely believed she was being reasonable. To even understand the weight of that phrase, you'd need to understand the ecosystem I grew up in. My childhood wasn't a battlefield. It was a well-manicured kingdom, one where my younger sister, Chloe, wore a gilded crown she never had to earn. She was brilliant in the way that photographs are brilliant. Bright, polished, easy to admire. At 16, she announced she wanted to be an influencer, and my parents embraced the idea like she declared a run for office. They bought her studio lights, cameras, expensive editing software, everything she needed to shine. When I timidly asked for help paying for an MCAT prep course a few months later, my mother didn't even glance up from a glossy travel brochure. "Elena, sweetheart," she'd said, soft and dismissive in the same breath, "that's a lot of money for something so unrealistic. You're setting yourself up for disappointment." That wasn't even cruelty. Not to her. It was pragmatism. So I worked 2 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, and pushed myself harder than anyone realized. Maybe harder than anyone cared to know. My parents weren't villains. They were simply people who didn't know how to celebrate the quiet, unglamorous grind of ambition. They preferred shiny things, easy things, Instagrammable things, things like Chloe. The irony is that their indifference crafted me more powerfully than their support ever could have. When rotations became unbearable, when I was suturing my first wound at 3 a.m. with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, it wasn't encouragement that steadied me. It was anger. Not the explosive kind. The quiet, precise anger that turns into resolve. Every exam I aced became a silent rebuttal. Every clinical success a whispered, "I can." I earned my residency in emergency medicine at a prestigious hospital a few states away. When that acceptance letter came, I collapsed into my chair and cried the kind of tears that taste like relief, not joy. Pure, exhausted relief. The first person I called was Uncle Ben, the only adult who had ever treated my dreams like something real instead of a phase. "Tell me something good, Doc," he said. "I got my residency," I choked out. He laughed so loudly I had to hold the phone away from my ear. I knew it. I told everyone who'd listen that Elena Vance doesn't quit. My second call to my parents was not nearly as warm. My father sounded distracted. My mother sounded inconvenienced. They congratulated me like they were checking off a box. Then I told them the date of my graduation ceremony. And in that moment, without realizing it, I handed them an opportunity to either show up for me, or cement a truth I had been too afraid to face for years. They chose the latter. And that's where everything began to break. Because the day they told me they were choosing a cruise over my graduation wasn't the moment I shattered. The moment I shattered was when I learned the real reason why. When my mother told me about the cruise, her tone was painfully casual, as though she were declining a lunch invitation instead of my graduation. I remember sinking into the edge of my bed, gripping the phone so hard my fingers trembled. "The timing is awful, Elena," she said. "Truly. But the deal was non-refundable. You understand, right?" Understand. It was a word she used often, usually when she wanted me to swallow something bitter without protest. But this time the bitterness clung to my ribs. Forced a breath. "The ceremony is in 3 weeks. Why book something now?" Beat of silence. Then the crack in her facade. "Well, we didn't think you'd actually make it this far. Your father said we shouldn't get our hopes up." There it was. Unvarnished. Or brutal. Not even said with malice. Just matter-of-fact resignation, as though she were describing the weather. as though my entire academic journey had been a coin toss in her mind, one she assumed would land on failure. For a long moment I couldn't speak. I simply listened to the faint hum of the phone line, the white noise of indifference stretching across miles. Right, I managed. Got it. But I didn't have it. I didn't understand any of it. And I felt something inside me slip, as quietly as a ship losing its anchor. After we hung up, I didn't cry. My body wouldn't move like it normally did. It felt like every cell had retreated inward, guarding itself. That night, I lay awake replaying every moment when they'd questioned me, doubted me, minimized me. Each one suddenly formed a pattern I couldn't unsee. Their disbelief hadn't been a momentary lapse. It had been the soundtrack of my life. And now it was the reason they'd chosen a vacation over me. The next morning I told myself I wouldn't call again. I didn't owe them another invitation. But old habits are persistent shadows, so I dialed anyway, hoping maybe they'd reconsider. They didn't answer. By the end of that week, the invitations had been delivered. Thick ivory envelopes embossed with gold. Official. Regal. Undeniably real. I imagined my mother holding it, weighing it in her palm, then setting it aside without a second thought. I wondered if she'd read my name slowly, Doctor of Medicine, or if she'd skim past it like a forgotten grocery list. My classmates were buzzing with excitement as the day approached. Their families were booking hotels, planning outfits, arguing about flower bouquets. Every conversation was a reminder of something I wouldn't have. One afternoon after class, I overheard my friend Ken talking about the 10 relatives flying in from California to celebrate him. My entire family couldn't even manage to. I escaped to the nearly empty library, the same one where I'd spent nights crying over textbooks, battling fatigue so heavy it distorted my vision. The shelves were familiar companions, silent witnesses to the grind my family never saw. I sat between two stacks and let the weight of everything settle. Graduation wasn't just a ceremony. It was a culmination. Victory. The moment I'd scraped toward for nearly a decade. And I was going to walk into it alone. But not entirely alone, because there was one person who had never failed to show up. Uncle Ben called that evening, as if he sensed the fracture in my voice. "How's my future ER superstar?" he boomed. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "They're not coming, Uncle Ben." He didn't respond right away. And that silence, the respectful kind, was warmer than any words my parents had spoken in years. "They should be ashamed," he finally said. "But you shouldn't feel 1 ounce of that burden." "I know," I whispered. But I didn't know. Not yet. "You've climbed a mountain they were too afraid to look at. That's on them," he said. "And I'll be there for you, kid. Even if I have to crawl across the state." His voice cracked on the last sentence. I didn't expect the tears, but they came, slow, quiet, unstoppable. For the first time that week, I didn't feel abandoned. Felt seen. But the peace didn't last long. Because the closer graduation came, the clearer it became that their absence wasn't just a void. It was a message. A statement. And it would change everything about who I was becoming. I just didn't know how yet. What I didn't realize was that their decision to skip my graduation was only the beginning. The moment that would ignite a chain of events none of us saw coming. Graduation morning arrived cloaked in sunlight so bright it felt almost ironic. The campus overflowed with laughter, camera flashes, and families wearing the kind of pride that radiates like heat. Everywhere I looked, people were wrapped in warm arms and tearful congratulations. A symphony of belonging. I walked alone. My gown felt heavier than it should have, its fabric brushing against my legs like a reminder of every step I'd taken by myself. I kept my chin high, but my chest felt tight, as though the air was thinner today, as though walking these familiar paths required double the effort. At the entrance, my friend Maria waved frantically from across the crowd. Her entire family, her parents, her brothers, her grandmother, even a cousin holding a poster board, surrounded her. They were loud, joyful, overflowing with energy. "Elena, come take a picture with us," she shouted. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "I'm okay. Go enjoy your moment." She hesitated, then hugged me tightly before being whisked back into the swirl of relatives. I watched her disappear into the arms of people who had shown up. That was the difference, showing up. It didn't require brilliance or money or effort, just intention. My assigned seat was somewhere in the 4th row. I tried to focus on the stage, but the murmur of the crowd from the upper balcony kept drawing my attention. Every cheer, every whistle, every camera click felt like a soft blow to the ribs. The chair beside me soon filled. David, a future pediatrician with a nervous laugh, sank into it. "My mom's been crying since sunrise," he whispered, amused and exasperated. "That's sweet," I said. He nodded, then looked at me. "Where are your folks sitting?" I froze for half a second. "They couldn't come." "Oh," he murmured, his face falling. "I'm sorry." The pity was worse than the absence. I forced a quick smile. "It's okay." The ceremony began with a flourish of music. Speeches followed, words about dedication, resilience, compassion. Words I had lived. Words my parents would never hear spoken about me. As the dean welcomed the graduating class, my mind drifted. Not to my parents, but to the nights in the anatomy lab, the hours spent stitching sutures until my fingers cramped, the patients whose hands I'd held in the ER. My journey wasn't theoretical, it was real, earned. Then the hooding ceremony began. One by one, graduates rose, crossed the stage, and bowed their heads as the velvet-lined hood was placed around their shoulders, a symbolic coronation into the medical world. When the presenter called, "Elena Michelle Vance," the sound cut through the air like a ripple. My heart thumped painfully. I stood, lifting my chin, and walked toward the stage. The lights above were warm, almost blinding. The applause was distant, unfocused, unanchored. Polite noise in a room full of strangers. I searched instinctively for faces that weren't there. The dean placed the hood around my shoulders and looked directly into my eyes. "Congratulations," she said quietly but firmly. "You earned this. Truly." There was something in her tone, not polite acknowledgement but genuine respect. Startled me, warmed me, settled something inside me. For the first time that day I felt whole. As I descended the steps, clutching the diploma folder like an anchor, my chest loosened. I wasn't walking into emptiness. I was walking into myself. After the ceremony, the courtyard exploded into celebration. Cups flew. Families screamed names across the lawn. My friends pulled me into group photos, laughing, crying, hugging each other. For a brief window, I was carried by their joy. It was easy to pretend I wasn't the only one without a cheering section. Eventually, though, they drifted off toward their waiting families, leaving me standing beneath a tree with sunlight filtering through the leaves. Check my phone. Nothing from my parents. Nothing from my sister. Just silence, the same kind they had always given me, only now it was deafening. I wasn't expecting anything, and yet something in me still sank. Then my phone vibrated. The caller ID flashed. Uncle Ben. I answered instantly. Well, he boomed. "If it isn't my favorite doctor." I laughed, the sound shaky and raw. "It's official," I said quietly. "I walked." "I knew you would," he replied. "I'm proud of you. More than I can say." His voice wrapped around me like a hug, soft and solid. I blinked back tears. "I wish you'd been there," I whispered. "Kid, I wish I had too. But trust me, I've got something planned. Something better." I didn't understand what he meant. Not until 4 days later. Because 4 days after graduation, a single photo message on my phone would flip my entire world, and my family's. Upside down, the days after graduation felt strangely suspended, like the world was holding its breath. I drifted through my small apartment, packing boxes, folding scrubs, sorting faded notes I no longer needed. My mind was quieter than it had been in years, but not peaceful. Quiet the way a room feels after the door slams. My phone stayed silent. No message from my mother. No congratulations from my father. Not even a half-hearted "proud of you" from my sister. It was a clean, unbroken silence. And that, in its own way, was the clearest truth they had ever given me. On the 4th day, I was kneeling on the floor taping another cardboard box shut when my phone buzzed. The screen lit with a number I didn't recognize. Photo message. I almost ignored it. But then curiosity nudged me, and I opened the image. For a heartbeat, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. A billboard. Towering, brilliant, impossible to miss. Rising above a 6-lane highway. And plastered across it, 20 feet tall, was me. Me in my white coat. Me, smiling, hopeful, framed by a stethoscope and sky. In bold letters across the top. "Congratulations, Dr. Elena Vance. Your hard work inspires us all. We are proud of you." The breath left my lungs. First I thought it had to be a mistake. Or maybe a bizarre marketing campaign by the university. He zoomed in. No sponsor. No logo. Nothing but my name. And a love I was unaccustomed to seeing expressed so loudly. Before I could process it, another notification popped up. My sister. A single text. What did you do? Not congrats. Not wow. Just accusation. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Uncle Ben. I answered in a daze. Uncle Ben, what is this? A booming laugh filled my ear. Ah, you saw it. You mean you did this? My voice wavered between disbelief and something dangerously close to laughter. Of course I did, he said. If your parents won't shout your success from the rooftops, someone has to put it in lights. He paused, pride thickening his voice. And besides, your mother drives past that highway every morning. I covered my mouth, half shocked, half horrified, fully overwhelmed. You put my face on a billboard. For an entire city. A month, he corrected cheerfully. I paid for 4 weeks. Let everyone see what I've known since you were a kid performing checkups on stuffed animals. It hit me then. Not the absurdity of it, not the spectacle, but the intention behind it. He wasn't showing off for me. He was standing up for me. It was love delivered at skyscraper scale. As I tried to speak, my phone buzzed again, this time with 3 incoming calls at once. I pulled it away from my ear. Chloe. The calls kept stacking. Again. Dad again. Mom a 3rd time. They were spiraling. The silence they had wrapped around me for years had been punctured, not by my words, but by a 20-foot reminder of the daughter they dismissed. Elena, Uncle Ben said gently. Don't pick up. They're not calling because they suddenly appreciate you. They're calling because now everyone else does. I exhaled shakily. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything yet, he replied. Just know this, I'm proud of you. Loud and clear. After we hung up, my phone erupted again. Calls, messages, notifications. A storm of attention that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with damage control. Chloe texted. Mom is panicking. Call her now. My father demanded. We need to discuss this immediately. Then my mother, dramatic as ever. Elena Michelle Vance, take that billboard down at once. You are humiliating us. Humiliating them. Not, we missed your graduation and regret it. Not, we're proud of you. Just fear. Fear that the world finally saw what they had chosen not to. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel overlooked. I didn't feel like the other daughter. Felt powerful. I put my phone on silent, sat on the kitchen floor between half-packed boxes, and let myself absorb the moment. Not the billboard. Not the panic. But the truth. Someone had shown up for me. Loudly enough for the entire city to hear. And the people who never had. They were finally being forced to face the consequences of their absence. But the real storm didn't begin until I finally answered my mother's call, and said the one thing she had never heard from me before. By the time I finally silenced my phone, it had racked up 23 missed calls, 9 voicemails, and a barrage of texts that grew increasingly frantic. I ignored every one of them. For the first time in my life, avoiding my family didn't feel like guilt. It felt like relief. But silence only holds for so long. By evening, as I sat eating leftover pizza and staring at half-packed boxes, the phone buzzed again. My mother's name lit the screen. I let it ring, intending to ignore it. But something inside me shifted. Not forgiveness, clarity. I pressed answer. The eruption was instant. Elena! My mother shrieked before I even said hello. Finally. What on earth do you think you're doing? Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? There it was. Not concern for me. Not regret. Not even curiosity. Just shame hers. I leaned back against the counter, my voice cold and steady. Good evening, Mom. Don't you good evening me, she snapped. This billboard, this stunt, is inappropriate. People have been calling me non-stop. Dozens of people saw it. Your father nearly fainted when his coworker texted him. I didn't put up the billboard. Then who? Uncle Ben did. Silence. Sharp and sudden. That man, she hissed, has overstepped for the last time. A billboard. A public spectacle. How dare he do something like that without consulting us? I laughed. Actually laughed because the irony was ridiculous. He didn't need your permission to celebrate me, I said. And he never pretended to support me. Unlike some people. Elena, do not twist this into something ugly, she said, voice trembling with a mix of panic and outrage. Your father and I made a simple scheduling mistake. It wasn't a mistake, I cut in. You booked that cruise after receiving my invitation. And then you told me you didn't think I'd make it. Her breath caught. Elena, that's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. The room felt still. My voice sounded different, even to me, stronger, older, unrecognizable. A version of myself I wished I'd met 10 years sooner. You hurt me, I said quietly. Not because you didn't come, but because you never believed in me in the first place. Not when I was 16. Not when I was 22. Not even now. Another long, heavy silence stretched across the line. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. You don't understand how worried we were. Medical school. Residency. It all felt so unstable. We were trying to protect you from failure. That wasn't protection, I said. That was doubt. And it became my fuel because you never offered support. My father's voice suddenly cut in. He must have taken the phone from her. Elena, he said stiffly, your mother is very upset. You owe her an apology for the billboard fiasco. That did it. My jaw clenched. No, I don't owe you anything. Not an apology. Not an explanation. Nothing. His tone grew sharp. We are your parents. And parents show up, I said. Parents believe in their kids. Parents don't skip milestones for a vacation. I took a breath, and the next words came out calm, precise. The kind of clarity you get only after a lifetime of swallowing your voice. You're embarrassed because the billboard exposes what you did. Not because of what it says. My mother's voice returned, trembling. Elena, what do you want from us? I want space, I said. A lot of it. You're pushing us away, she whispered. Do you really want to lose your family over this? I'm not losing anything, I replied. I'm protecting myself. Closed my eyes. For years, I had been the daughter who apologized first, softened first, forgave first. But now I was simply done. You don't get to dictate the terms anymore, I said. If there's ever going to be a relationship between us again, it has to be honest. And it has to start with the two of you actually seeing me, not the version you made up. Neither of them responded. Because they didn't know how to. I'll reach out when I'm ready, I said. But until then, please stop calling. And for the first time in my life, I hung up on them. I stood there in the quiet of my half-empty apartment, heart pounding, hands shaking, but not from fear. From relief. From the unfamiliar sensation of choosing myself. I knew the fallout wasn't over. That call had cracked something open. In them, in me, in the very dynamic that had ruled my entire life. And what came next wouldn't just change our relationship. It would redefine it. Because once truth enters a room, it never leaves quietly. But I had no idea that the next call, the one I wasn't expecting, would shift everything again, and reveal a consequence of the billboard that none of us saw coming. And the days after I hung up on my parents, the world felt unnervingly quiet. Not peaceful, but quiet in the way a forest gets before a storm. I went back to packing boxes, finalizing paperwork for my new residency, and trying to settle into the strange new space I'd carved for myself. A space without the weight of their expectations. Without the ache of seeking their approval. Without the old version of me who kept waiting for them to show up. The silence from my family was absolute. No calls, no text, not even Chloe's passive-aggressive commentary. But silence doesn't erase history, it just reveals it. On the 7th day my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but something made me answer. Hello. A warm, steady voice responded. Hi, is this Dr. Elena Vance? Yes, I said cautiously. Who's calling? This is Mark Holston, he said. I'm the managing partner of Holston and Evergreen Medical Foundation. We run several community health initiatives and scholarship programs. Blinked. Sorry, I'm not sure I understand. He chuckled gently. Let me explain. I drive past the Eastvale Highway every morning. And this week, I kept passing the billboard with your face on it. My heart kicked hard against my ribs. The billboard, I repeated, stunned. Yes, he said warmly. It's not every day you see a young doctor being celebrated so boldly. It caught my attention, in the best way. I didn't breathe. As it turns out, he continued, we're expanding a program that places new physicians in underserved communities while funding additional training. Your story. Well, even from the billboard alone, it's clear you're someone who pushes forward despite challenges. I let out a shaky laugh. You got all that from a highway sign. Actually, he said, I learned more when I called your residency program. One of your supervising physicians spoke extremely highly of you. Something warm flickered in my chest, something like pride without pain attached to it. I'd like to meet with you, he continued. If you're open to it. We're looking for doctors with resilience, grit, heart. That was a quality no one in my family had ever used about me. When would you like to talk? Yes. He paused. How about tomorrow morning? Coffee, my treat. I agreed, scribbled down the address, and hung up. For a long time I just sat there, phone in hand, letting the moment settle into my bones. The billboard, the same one my parents were terrified of, had opened a door I didn't even know existed. A door they had never been able to open for me. A door I had earned. That evening I called Uncle Ben. You're not gonna believe what happened, I said, and I told him everything. The phone call, the program, the opportunity. He didn't speak at first. Kid, he finally said, voice thick. Sometimes life has a funny way of rewarding the people who keep going even when no one claps for them. I swallowed hard. I wish Mom and Dad could see that. Maybe they will, he said gently. But whether they do or not, this is yours. And he was right. The next morning, I met with Mr. Holston in a quiet cafe near downtown. He was older, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and kind in a way that felt grounded, not performative. We talked for nearly 2 hours, about medicine, burnout, resilience, purpose. He asked thoughtful questions, listened intently, and didn't once look at me with doubt. When our meeting ended, he slid a card across the table. We'd like you in the program, he said. If you want it. I stared at the card, my chest tightening with something fierce and unexpected. Oh, real unfiltered hope. Thank you, I whispered. Truly. As I walked out of the cafe, sunlight poured over me, warm and bright. Not the sharp, painful kind from graduation, but something gentler, something like a beginning. For the first time in my life, the world felt wide open. And strangely, I wasn't thinking about my parents, not their excuses, not their silence, not even their shame. I was thinking about myself, who I was becoming and who I refused to be again. But life, as always, isn't linear. Because later that evening, as I taped up the last moving box, my phone buzzed with a message that made my stomach drop. A message I didn't expect. A message that would pull me right back into the storm I thought I had escaped. Because no matter how far you run, the past has a way of knocking on your door. And this time it wasn't my parents.